Ooh, welcome to another episode, Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Special Friday evening episode of the show this evening. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, uh, Jacob from Jabhook Boxing, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, special Labor Day weekend edition. Getting it started right.
Indeed. In terms of that link, Gail, you was asking about, just check the private chat here. You'll be able to find it. I just reposted it again. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto was when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. Going to try to make it a short episode, given that we're coming on Labor Day weekend and all that. And I know everybody's going to enjoy those festivities. Uh, For those who want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report blog page, place to go to p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. If you want to check the top right portion of the blog page, you will find links to where to find us all over social media, or where to find us on all platforms that carry RSS feeds, and also the donation links. Let donation be the best nation. We got a Cash Me and PayPal donate link. So just check the blog page for that. And finally, you can also find the link to my Beachbody Online coaching page. I think Gail is going to be joining that soon. If you're interested, let's build together. August Fitness Challenge is going, getting ready to wrap up. Going to start anew in September. So just check Pound for Pound Box Report. You'll find a link to my fitness page if you're interested in anything Beachbody. If you're interested in fun and exciting, yet challenging fitness group challenges, just check it out. Let's get things going by recapping the things that went down this the previous weekend. We get ready to come up on another weekend, Labor Day weekend. Let's go back last week. Uh, Starting off with the profile bout of last week, which was Sergey Kovalev defending his title in Russia against mandatory contender Anthony Yarde. Kovalev stopping Yarde by 11th round KO. I'll go to you, Gail. This is one of the more intriguing fights of the year, and it proved that way during the bout itself. One of the better bouts of the year. Kovalev got off to a good start, establishing the jab, establishing distance, being the better boxer. But Yarde, he had his moments for sure, particularly in round 8 when he hurt Kovalev, head and body shots. But you got to give Kovalev credit here. The
All the
Kovalev, the Kovalev of, I would say, 3, 4 years ago would not, in my opinion, would not have been able to overcome getting hurt to that degree against Yard. But the experience showed, the maturity showed, as well as the guidance and wisdom of James Buddy McGirt. He recovered in round 9, reestablished the jab and the distance. Yard, he started to fatigue because he went all out in the 8th round. But Kovalev showed that he's a pro's pro, and hurt Yard in the 10th, finished him off in the 11th. Very good bout. Uh, Again, you have to give Kovalev credit. Your impressions on the fight itself? Very entertaining, very exciting bout. Yeah.
It turned out to be about with a lot of twists and turns, didn't it? A lot of drama, a lot of dramatic narrative, and some interesting storylines going in and coming out of that fight. I did call it for Kovalev. I did call it by late round stoppage. Um, it didn't go quite though as I expected it. The outcome though was what I thought would happen. What we saw were a few things that played into it. A lot of credit goes to Buddy McGirt. First of all, he had Kovalev in excellent condition for the fight. Excellent mind. Yeah, he had his mind right. He had him fit. Kovalev has been the one over the years who's gotten a knock for gassing out in later rounds. Funny, it turned out it was the younger man, Yarde, who gassed out in the later rounds. Kovalev could have stayed on the outside and boxed Yarde. He's never gotten credit for his boxing skills. He's the crusher, right? That's what we all want to see. That's what everyone was hoping to see in this fight, a real bang fest, right? That wasn't in Kovalev's best interests. And for the first half of the fight, that's how it went. But Yarde did start figuring out how to get inside on Kovalev. And one thing we do know about Kovalev, he hates the body shot. He hates that shit. He avoids it at all costs. And most of the time, he's successful. In this case, Yarde did get to him. Yarde finally realized he had to throw caution to the wind a little bit to get in there, and it almost worked for him because he did tag Kovalev. But his fitness, Michael, he should have called you, man. His fitness was not where it needed to be. He couldn't follow up, and he simply doesn't have the lengthy experience as a pro or as an amateur to be able to put those punches together in combination and to will himself forward over that hump. You know, we had the telltale mouthpiece coming out. He was breathing through his mouth. Those are things we can see as fans. You better believe those are things that Buddy McGirt and Sergey Kovalev can see too. And the other factor that definitely played in was the fact that Kovalev was there in his hometown, in front of his hometown fans. And when the going got tough in the 8th round and the crowd was going crazy, willing him to continue, it absolutely made a difference. You've got to think Kovalev went into the corner after that 8th round and thought, damn, I absolutely cannot quit. I can't quit here in front of my hometown fans. I got to suck it up and keep going. And that's a veteran's experience, knowing it'll kill me to sit here and quit. I won't die if I get knocked out or I can't run the string out, but I have got to go out there. I have got to go out there. And here's where Buddy McGirt's little pep talk came in. He lit a fire under Kovalev's ass by saying, you need to show me something or I'm going to stop the fight. Now, how much of that was just snapping Kovalev's head around to get his attention? How much of that was Buddy thinking about Maxim Dadashev and what had happened in that fight? Maybe a combination of the two. Nevertheless, he sent Kovalev back out. Kovalev had recovered. He hung in there and did what he needed to do. And when he realized Yarde was done, into the 9th round, it became apparent. Suddenly, he was in a position to turn it on, finish off the fight. And his snapping power jab ended up stopping the fight. He was masterful with that jab. If we learned anything in this fight, is just how good that jab is. And that now is the weapon everyone needs to fear when they face Sergey Kovalev. Really a good performance. And you've got to think also, when the going got tough, that Kovalev saw this certain red-headed face floating around out there in front of him, calling him forward to the big money fight coming up with that red-headed Mexican in November, which now
Indeed.
we're all really intrigued to see.
Indeed, that big fight as well as that probably 8-figure payday. I'm going to you, Jacob. McGirt has definitely been a benefit to Kovalev's career. I would argue more from a mental and psychological standpoint. Talk about his role in the fight. Talk about the fight itself. I'll just say personally, last week I thought Yarde would pull it off and win by stoppage. He almost did so. Also, let's talk about Yarde here because I watched the ESPN Plus broadcast, and both Ward and especially Timothy Bradley made notes to talk about Yarde basically not doing any sparring and how that hindered him. Talk about that aspect in terms of Yard's preparation, the criticism that he and his trainer Tunde has received after the fight for their lack of sparring in preparation for a fight of this magnitude.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kovalev was damn lucky to get that win. I had picked him to win based off experience, kind of like most of the panel besides yourself. But shout out to Ms. Fight Diva 40 on Twitter, where she was going back and forth with her. But in regards to what you just spoke about, Yard's trainer, he's not really a trainer. I mean, the sparring and these certain things that boxers do have been doing it for many years, and it's because they're effective ways to build up your durability and to build up your gas tank and things like that. I think Yard not having sparred, and his trainer neglecting to use this tool to build up his gas tank is what lost him the fight. He basically had Kovalev out on his feet in the 8th round, and if he had, if in the 9th round he didn't, he was so tired, he basically took it off, and Kovalev was able to recover, and then from then on it was just he was just basically using his jab and having his way with Yard, and he knocked him down with a jab. It wasn't like an extremely hard jab, but he was just done at that point. He didn't get up. Like Gel was saying, he was breathing out of his mouth, early on. You got to put in, the sparring is going to build that gas tank, and it's going to give you uh, that feeling of, hey, I'm tired, but it's only the 3rd round or whatever. I don't know, and I'm sure you guys have all sparred before, but just sparring for 1 round is fucking tiring as hell. So these guys that do the 15 rounds and they're doing it constantly, that's how they're able to stay in the game. But I have to give Yard credit in the sense that without that, the gas tank and whatnot, he actually did do pretty well in spots in the fight. So he definitely has some skill. I didn't like some of the antics he was doing, like kind of hitting his chest, like saying like you can't hurt me kind of thing. I think that kind of turned around and bit him in the ass, so to speak. He's got to be able to to avoid the jab, because he was getting painted all night with that jab. But he's got to work on his defense. He might have a little bit too much muscle on him, so that's going to also you know be a problem. Because his hands are going to get heavy, and they're going to start to drop. Kovalev, had some decent defense in the beginning, but his hands started to drop, as the fight wore on too. He's never been I don't think, like a defensive wizard, so to speak. And the other thing that the trainer missed, which was the blueprint that Ward put out there, which was Kovalev doesn't like to be hit to the body. But they waited, and it seemed like they waited to really go after him into the body until later in the fight. Like in that 8th round. I think if they would have gone earlier to the body, they could have maybe pulled out this fight. So, there's a lot of kind of inexperienced mistakes that I think that were made by Yard and his team. I think he needs to get a new team, if you ask me, if he wants to go further. Because if they're going to continue to go this direction, I don't think that he's going to be in for the long haul. I don't think either one of these guys can take on any of the top light heavyweights in the division. Kovalev, in my opinion, I know he won the fight. I know he showed a kind of a dimension to himself, being able to survive that 8th round and come back. But again, it was against a very tired guy who had basically nothing left. And I think he really needs to think about retirement. He's not the fighter that he was, and I don't think that he beats any of the top guys in the division that have the belts. I think he actually could get really hurt in the way that Alvarez knocked him out pretty good. But it was an entertaining fight overall. And as far as the Canelo thing, I think this is what Ward did. I think this is one of the reasons that Canelo wants this fight, because as crazy as it sounds, that is a winnable fight for him, because he does attack the body and he's going to go to the body early. And one thing that Buddy hasn't done with Kovalev, or it doesn't seem like, is really built up his body, for him to be able to take body shots or to cover up in that sense. He's still susceptible to the body. So that's a big hole in his game that someone like Canelo, who, although I can't stand him, he has skills, and he'll feed off that right away. He's going to go after the body right away, and that could be, lead to a win.
Your reaction, Daniel, in terms of what you saw from the part of on the behalf of Kovalev, as well as what you saw from Anthony Yarde.
What I saw from Kovalev mainly was a continuation of him adjusting to Bernie McGurk's style of being more of a boxer rather than a puncher. And that's what he showed for a good first half of the fight, maintaining the jab, maintaining distance. But unfortunately, it has net, and this is the folly of Sergey Kovalev, unfortunately, because he's known as the crusher, because he has been known to knock people out. He's never really had to work on people, like Jacob mentioned, in taking the body, because he kept knocking people out. So he always had that as a failsafe. But now that Ward pretty much put it out there, and this fight just further exasperated it, he probably, if he wants to continue, and that's a big if at this point, if he wants to continue, I would definitely suggest he has to do with the body going into it. But sometimes it's a little bit too late for that. As far as Yarde goes, it's not only the fact that sparring helps you as far as preparing for an opponent, preparing for this game plan. It builds your endurance. It builds your cardio in a bit, because remember, sparring sessions can go like 15. Sometimes they can go 30 rounds, depending on the camp.
And yeah, there's infamous footage of Mayweather when he's prepared for a fight. I've seen him go 25, 30 minutes straight of sparring with no breaks.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It builds your endurance, and and like we saw a little bit with Joshua in his fights. When you're built and it's a lot of muscles, like the way Anthony Yarde is built, like you said, Mike, it requires, and like Gus mentioned, it requires more oxygen. So when you're tired for activity, you're definitely tired. And that 8th round, now I will admit, as soon as I saw Luis Pabon as a referee, I was afraid of some fuckery. I'm glad we didn't get in this case. Because we have to admit, there's a justifiable case that he could have stopped Kovalev in the 8th round. But Luis Pabon actually did not act like Luis Pabon and let the fight continue. But that barrage that Yarde took tired him out, and it showed in the fight. Because think about it, like Jacob mentioned, like the punch that took Yarde out wasn't a hard punch; it was a jab, and it wasn't even a straight jab; it was like an angle jab. But like I said, you could tell he was already done. If I'm like Kovalev's team, I fully agree with Jacob. I do not think he, at this stage of his career, could go against any of the other champions. The only one I want to see him against, for personal reasons, is Beterbiev. just for merely personal, just because those two despise each other that much. But I can't put him Beterbiev in that area because he might hurt him too much. Vostok, same thing. Bivol presents a different challenge. Like, he won't go for the knockout, but he's obviously younger and is a little bit better skilled. As far as Yarde goes, he can rebuild from this. Like, he did a good showing of himself. He can rebuild from this fight, go to a point where he can try to challenge the other champions. In which, if that's the case, I would probably challenge Bivol. Just because of Bibol's attitude that if he can't knock you out within 3 rounds, he doesn't try anymore. He just goes for the decision. Everybody else, I wouldn't do it. Anybody else, I wouldn't do it. And quite frankly, at this stage, give me Buatsi versus Yarde.
Buatsi, who actually fights
we're gonna see
this
him
weekend. Who fights this weekend on the Lomachenko Campbell card? Let's talk future here, particularly as it pertains to the Crusher. You guys, Daniel, Jacob, you mentioned how he would fare in a possible matchup against the other champions, Beterbiev, Bivol, Gvozdyk. And right now, I would say that I would still like to see the fight because it's such a grudge match and they got such beef. Kovalev and Beterbiev. I just think that right now, I think Bivol would beat him. Gvozdyk, I'm still not sure about Gvozdyk in terms of how good he is. I just still have questions on him. I just think Bivol is the best in the division. But when it comes to Kovalev, the obvious fight out there is one Canelo Alvarez, middleweight champion right now. Though Kovalev won, looking forward to a possible fight with Canelo. I see why Canelo wants this fight, to Daniel's earlier point, because here's the thing, and anybody can chime in. Kovalev, yes, he has that good jab, that good stick. But if Canelo can take his punch, I think personally that Kovalev can be in trouble because we all know what Kovalev is vulnerable. Say what you want about Canelo. He has improved greatly over the years in terms of his defense, in terms of his footwork. He can find ways to get in there. And we know, given the power dynamic that Canelo has over the entire sport, you know this fight is going to be held at a catch weight in some way. He's going to make Kovalev come down. So, in terms of a possible fight with Kovalev, what do you see? And do you think this proposed November date is too much of an early turnaround, given A, the age of Canelo, and B, the age of Kovalev, excuse me, and B, the fact that he was in such a tough fight with Yarde?
I'm going to jump in here. This is the best fight Kovalev can make right now. He's admitted he doesn't have a lot of time left in his career. Before this victory, he said, I only have a few fights left. He suddenly gets, a whole, rush of bravado after he won. Yeah, I want all the belts. Well, you know what? That's not really happening. That's just not happening. The Canelo fight is the right fight for him to make. Yeah, it's a little soon. My understanding is they're going to push it to November 9th. That does give him 10 weeks or so. He wasn't cut. And he was momentarily hurt, but he came out of that fight fairly clean. I think it's doable. I'm not sure about a catch weight. Canelo's fought at 168 easily. Maybe we end up with a catch weight in the low 170s. Kovalev can make that. He's looking very lean. thanks to Buddy McGirt. I think he recognizes that his stamina is good. I will say that for Kovalev, as he's gotten older, he's a light heavyweight. He's always been a light heavyweight. It helps that he's got those little bird legs. He stays, he's got pretty leaned out muscles. I think he'll be fine. And he can't deny the payday. That is the kind of payday. And you're right. That is an 8-figure payday. The rumor is a $12 to $14 million payday for him. That's the kind of payday you could retire on. He has 2 young children. For a lot of his foibles outside the ring, the one thing Kovalev is a very devoted father. And if you've ever seen him with his young son, who he calls Little Crusher, Alexander, who's about 4, that's a very genuine relationship. He now has a young daughter who's a baby. And that's the kind of money that can make your family comfortable, especially if he moves back to Russia, which maybe he will. I don't know if he wants to raise his kids in the United States. Maybe he stays in LA or Florida and they live in Russia. In any event, the Canelo fight seems of great interest. DAZN needs to have a fight for Canelo this year. So they are under pressure. John Skipper at DAZN is under major pressure to make this happen. My sources tell me that Golden Boy's ready to go. They're good with it. They understand what the money prospect is, especially now that Kovalev's won. It's going to happen, and I think it's fine. Like you, Michael, I'd love to see him fight Beterbiev. And, I think if they both lose, if Kovalev loses to Canelo and Beterbiev loses to Gvozdyk, what the hell? They both go out in a blaze of glory in the grudge match, right? Sometime next year. I can absolutely see that. Is Kovalev really going to try to unify all the belts again? Oh, hell no. No. You're absolutely right. Bivol is by far the most technically skilled fighter in the division. He's not the bludgeon banger, crazy knockout puncher that people like to see from the big guys, but he wins, and he's always going to win. He's got he's got that Lomachenko-like nimble footwork. He sees punches coming. He does not necessarily have to get hit to get in there and win. Gvozdyk, he's very similar. Beterbiev would be a fun fight because those two guys absolutely hate each other's guts, and it's for real. They fight in very similar ways, and that would just be crazy messy, I have a feeling. And I think the pre-fight lead-up between them could get spicy. But count on seeing Canelo and Kovalev. I'm imagining in Las Vegas, probably the second weekend in November.
To quote Andre Ward, this is prize fighting, Daniel, not pride fighting. Your thoughts on the prospect of a Kovalev Canelo showdown later on this year?
I agree with Gail that if I'm Kovalev's team, this is the fight to make as far as money. The cachet that Canelo brings. That pretty much all the other champions at 175 are kind of tied up to themselves right now. And like they mentioned it, they know they don't really have a lot of time left. And the one thing for Kovalev hasn't been done is as many big fights as he had, like the fights with John Pascal, for example, where Pascal obviously was a draw on the Andre Ward fights. That still would not be the same type of payday that a fight with Canelo Alvarez could make. Now you can make the suggestion of maybe do a catch weight, maybe not put not put your title on the line if you're Kovalev, but financially it's the best fight to make financially. If I'm Canelo's team, I could probably see him. I could probably see him doing it just for the mere fact that, like I've always mentioned it, a Canelo combination always has a body punch, whether it's the beginning, middle, or end. And the body issues for Kovalev still persist. So it'd be a very interesting fight to make. November would be pretty would be a pretty good time to make it in Las Vegas. They don't have an NBA team yet, so you don't have to worry about scheduling T-Mobile Arena. And you're still the major game in town because the Raiders are not going to come in until next year. So it's a very, very good financial standing. I get why some people don't like it, mainly whether it's Canelo like picking a champion that probably is not at his best, but at the same time, the zone needs to make money. The zone needs to do something to show that their investment is actually paying off. And right now, when they're going to go into this tier system where they're offering people, I think, what, $99 for a year subscription, that's still asking a lot of people money, especially when you compare it to ESPN Plus, when it's like $5 a month. So they need to do this. Like, it makes sense. I get why some people have a bad taste in their mouth from doing it, but it makes sense.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Well, like we like to say on the show, we don't hate it, but I absolutely hate this fight. I think this is trash. I'm not going to give Canelo any credit for moving up 2 weight classes to fight an old Kovalev who in my opinion, I think should retire. He's not at the peak of his powers. He's just trying to pick off the weakest guy like he did with Rocky Fielding. And this guy who thinks he's bigger than boxing, in my opinion, this diva, he's a middleweight champion, but he's going to move up 2 weight classes, and then he has his team bitching about why they got stripped of the IBF belt. If they want to make a fight for Canelo, a significant fight, they have Demetrius Andrade. He has a belt. He won his fight. He's on DAZN. It's there. They can make that fight. It would be a unification fight. With the same thing with the Kovalev though. It's a lose-lose. I think. I mean, money-wise, yes, he can walk away with a bunch of money, but it doesn't make sense for him, because if he does beat Canelo, let's say he does beat Canelo, he just beat a smaller guy that moved up 2 weight classes. So I'm not going to give him credit for that win. So to me, this doesn't. I understand it's prize fighting. I understand these guys need want to make money and all that stuff, but I just don't like. I think this ruins the sport of trying to make these type of super fights between guys that are not in the same divisions. Like, I can understand if somebody wants to move up division, campaign, like if Canelo wanted to campaign at light heavyweight and he had a few fights at light heavyweight and then he gets a shot at the belt. I don't think you should, just because you're the biggest star in boxing, you should automatically get a shot at the belt. That's why we have rankings. That's why the contenders that are in the spot, that's why they fight. They're just as important, in my opinion, as everybody else. They're putting in their training, they're putting in the hard work, they're putting in the rounds, they're getting the wins, and just so because they're not a name, they can't get a fight. It's just, to me, it's ruining the sport in the sense that you have guys just going from weight to weight to weight, just trying to collect belts in different weight classes versus just staying in a lane and establish a legacy. I think that this younger generation, for some reason, they're obsessed with getting as much hardware as possible, not the quality of the fights. So I hope this fight doesn't happen, but most likely it probably is, because like it was mentioned before, DAZN needs a big fight. This would be a big name fight. Canelo's probably going to win that fight because Kovalev can't take the body shots, and that's what he's going to do, and he knows it. They're smart. His team's smart. They're going to do that all night long from round 1 till round 5 when it's probably over. And he's gonna be praised as pound for pound #1 because he went up 2 weight classes, all that stuff. But to me, it's all mirage. It's all bullshit.
Well, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Well-
Tell us how you really feel. Wow. You want to say
Yeah.
something, Daniel?
Yeah, rare.
Yeah, well, we have to look into this, the whole factor. I would call this the Pacquiao effect a little bit. Because we'll admit, as fans, we did get enamored of Manny Pacquiao's journey, climbing up the weight divisions up to junior middleweight. To make a fight with people, even if it's just one fight at junior middleweight, with a guy who he was clearly smaller than, but had the faster hands in doing it. That's one of the things that has enamored the modern boxing fan. But I can bluntly say it, Canelo Alvarez is not Manny Pacquiao. Canelo, for the most part, has stayed at least within 1 or 2 divisions of a weight class. It's not a similar situation, and we have to look at it. A lot of the fights that when he moved up to a certain point, he was the underdog, Manny. Because everybody kept going to the same thing. Oh, Manny's a smaller guy, and we're going against a larger guy. And he ultimately wound up beating them. Canelo's not going to get the same effect of it because everybody understands that Canelo is a businessman in this sense. I get Jacob's sentiment. It's one that a lot of people share when it comes into how boxing's done, but that's the problem. It has relied so much on the business front that things like this happen, and things like this always tend to happen in leagues like in the NBA. Like, we technically are out of the super team era as far as like 3 or 4 people on a team that's completely stacked, but it goes through phases, and now we're going through that phase. It's going to take things like a World Boxing Super Series to get things back on track as far as unifying and finding the best within the respective divisions.
But here's also why this fight makes sense for Canelo. He's looking already at his young age, not even 30 yet, at legacy. What legacy is he following? Who's the greatest, who's the acknowledged greatest Mexican fighter ever? Chavez Sr., 3-division champion. Canelo wins this fight against Kovalev. He's a 4-division champion. That's why he wants the fight. In addition to the fact it's good money, it's a fight that DAZN will be happy with, it's acceptable to him, it makes sense from a tactical point of view, it's a fight he can win. But there is enough danger present, and Kovalev's enough of a wild card, especially given his performance last weekend, that it's an intriguing fight. I get it. We are all purists in the sense that to us, the highest, best, noblest ambitions a fighter can have is to unify their division, right? To us, that's the big accomplishment. That is not universal. Witness the guys who have been unified champions. Sometimes in the modern era, it's made a difference, sometimes not. I'm not sure Terrence Crawford has ever gotten the credit he deserves for unifying at 140.
No, he hasn't.
Not at all. Lomachenko, to his credit, we're going to talk about him a little later. That's what he wants to do right now at 135. That's his total goal. He is not seeking these crazy up and down, let's jump weight classes fights. Is he getting a lot of applause for it? No, not really. So I get why these guys say, well, nobody gives a shit. No one wants to give me credit for doing something that's really difficult to do. Then why don't I just get paid? Come on. They work for money. They're not out there having fun. This is their job. I get it.
It's going to
If
be
Canelo
interesting.
doesn't Canelo get
Go
paid regardless though? I mean, he signed a deal. He gets
No,
paid regardless.
no, that is absolutely not true. That contract pays him as long as the fights are executed. They've got to execute. Now, who's in breach of contract is where the question comes in. Is it DAZN because they reject certain opponents? Is it Canelo because he rejects certain opponents? We've also got this issue of Canelo claiming he didn't know that he was expected to fight a third fight with Gennady Golovkin, and that's bubbling around in the background. See, here's what works very nicely for everyone right now. They can pretend that problem isn't an issue because they can turn their attention to an opponent that they're both okay with, that's a makeable fight. Golden Boy and main events have worked together many times, not an issue. Kovalev's a free agent. Top Rank's fine with it, who's been sort of his de facto promoter. And it's makeable, money's there, the date's there. It solves a lot of problems for everybody. And it's truly, honestly desirable for the legacy of the fourth division. And who else is he going to take on at light heavyweight? We just talked about it. Do we think he can beat any of the other current title holders or even some of the aspiring guys bubbling under the surface? I think the only guy he could beat would be Zurdo. That's it. But that's even, I think, too much of a risk for him. Kovalev is the perfect target. Perfect.
Well, the thing with Bud, and this is probably what
last word on
hurts
this,
him the
Daniel.
most. Yeah, I said this is just related to Bud. Like the main thing to me that's hurt the situation in his eyes is that okay, he unified, but he never defended it once. He never got the chance to come into the ring as the single unified, undisputed junior welterweight champion. That's one of the things that hurts him. And it's the same thing a little bit with Usyk. But with Usyk's sake, like I know we'll talk about it a little later, but he's going into what has essentially been the glamour division of the sport.
It's going to be interesting. The fight is probably going to happen for sure before the end of the year, and we'll see how it goes. Um, let's move on to talk about some other fights. Down at 115 pounds, earlier this year, April, we saw Juan Francisco Estrada defeat Vasiliy in a rematch to win the 115-pound title, 100 WBC version, excuse me. Well, over the weekend in his home country of Mexico, he made his first defense of that belt, a voluntary defense against Dewayne Beamon. Uh, Last week, I felt that the fight itself was going to be better than many people thought. It turned out to be the case. I'll go to you, Daniel. I mean, listen, was Beamon the big underdog? Absolutely. But I had a sense that he was going to come to fight, and he did just that. Um, he made it fun. He made it entertaining. But you can tell by watching the fight that Estrada, his goal was to put on the show, and he did that. He had fun in there. Uh, he took a shot or two every now and then, but overall, he had control and did what he had to do and eventually took out Beamon in round 9. One-sided fight, but a fun fight yet still.
Yeah, it's one of those fights where the result doesn't tell you a lot of the story of it. The result, yeah, it's a pretty much a one-sided affair by Gallo Estrada, winning the 9th round. The fight was never really in doubt, but it was entertaining. Beamon showed that he wasn't there simply to collect a paycheck, and that actually helps out in these type of fights because we know, in a sense, that this is not the fight that obviously Gallo Estrada wanted. But it was a fight that showcased his skills. It was a fight that let people know, yes, I am the real champion here at 115 pounds with WBC, and I'm ready to do what apparently the previous champion, Vasiliy, did not want to do, which is unify. And it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up because we're in this era in Mexican boxing. Okay, everybody knows Canelo's a top dog. Everybody knows that. But we also are talking about, we have to admit, Canelo Alvarez that has been a professional boxer pretty much for half his life. So that's been around. But yeah, he's not even 30 yet, but guess what? Like, he's been a professional fighter before he could drive, technically. So he probably is thinking already about legacy and probably stepping back when he still has his faculties. So that's going to leave a pretty decent-sized vacuum. And this fight, yeah, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a fight that you could say you could show in the highlight reels. But it's a fight where Estrada made his case that, yeah, I'm going to be one of those guys that's going to be the next wave of Mexican greats.
Jacob and Gail, your reaction to the fight?
It was an entertaining fight. Good call. I didn't know much about Beamon, and then during the telecast, we were talking about how I think he started boxing when he was like 30 or something like that, 33 or something crazy like that. So
he turned pro at that age. He began fighting amateur 25, 26, something in that range.
but he didn't have that many amateur fights, though, right?
Right.
Right. So anyway, Beamon was entertaining. I mean, he was talking a lot of shit, and even inside the ring, which I guess he tends to do. He's a road warrior. I think this was his like 6th fight in Mexico or something like that.
This fight was his seventh straight fight in Mexico.
Yeah.
Ah,
So
U.S. fighter, and dare I say this, a black U.S. fighter fighting in Mexico that many times. Weird.
well, they were talking about it on the telecast that apparently what he was telling everybody is that the only reason he was fighting in Mexico is because nobody wants to fight him in the States. Like they can't make fights in the States, so he's just trying to fight as often as possible, which I
It,
like. He fought
yeah,
5 times in
it
2018.
yeah, yeah. It reminds me of how Too Sharp Johnson built his career fighting in the Forum in Inglewood, fighting basically all the tough and grizzled Mexican and Mexican American fighters out there on his road to what ultimately became a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, so I mean, and again, he actually landed some right hands on Estrada, but I don't think he was talking about it like he had a power. I didn't see a lot of power in his punches. It seemed like Estrada took him pretty well. I kind of didn't like that. I know Estrada was fighting in front of his hometown. I think they put 12,000 people in that stadium or whatever, that arena, and there were some times where he was like kind of showboating a little bit. I think he put his hand like on the top rope and was kind of like, kind of messing around. I don't like that kind of stuff because I think it's dangerous because I think that can leave you susceptible to getting caught. Like when you're so kind of cocky that you don't think that the guy can beat you or hurt you, but then it's like those punches that you don't see, and then they turn the fight. So I wish he would been more business-like in the sense of showcasing his skills because I think he is a very, very good fighter. I know he wants to fight. I think Yafai, and hopefully they can make that fight because the whole DAZN Eddie Hearn thing. But it was a good showing. He was able to basically wear Beamon down, and he had him basically just hurt, and he had him hurt a few times, but more significantly in the 9th round. I don't think the first two. I think the second round when he had 2 knockdowns, it didn't look like Beamon was that hurt. He just got caught, and it seemed like he got caught with punches, but it was he was kind of off balance though too, and his footing wasn't it's kind of like the force of the punch kind of put him down on a seat the first one, and so he kept on coming forward, and he was game, and it was a good fight, but hopefully Estrada will get some of the top guys and be able to unify.
Yeah, we'll talk about the future in a second, but I want to go to Gail first and give her reaction to Estrada's TKO win over Beamon.
I found it very entertaining. The crowd found it very entertaining. Jacob, you're kind of having a get off my lawn night tonight. I'm okay with the around a little bit. Come on. He was risking nothing. He didn't start fooling around until well into the fight. I give Beamon a lot of credit. I really do. Because he's in one of those lower weight divisions, he's got to go where the talent is. And the talent is in Mexico and Central America and Japan and Thailand and Asia and Philippines. So he can't enjoy a lot of home cooking. And, props to him for going right in there. And I perceived that despite the fact he got his butt whipped by Estrada, he gave it everything he had. The crowd seemed to respect his effort, and good for them. But hey, we all know what they were there to see, and they got their show. And it's no different when we occasionally see someone like Lomachenko, who has pulled his little matador cape and bull, impression, and several other things like that. Fighters do that. I'm fine with it. Come on. He was in no danger, none at all.
Let's talk future here. They kind of let the cat out the bag in interviews leading up to the fight. It looks as if what's up next for Gallo is a unification bout against WBA champion Cal Yafai. Rumored to be happening possibly on the undercard of Joshua, excuse me. Um, your thoughts on that? I've heard people say, yeah, uh, decent fight. Let me get Daniel back on here. He went off the stream here. I'm sorry. Um, Yafai, he's a decent fighter, not great in any way. Um, Arguably the weakest fighter in the division, but he has a deal with the zone. He's on the zone. He's signed to Matchroom, so it makes the most sense, even though there could arguably be better opponents out there for Estrada at 115 pounds. Your thoughts?
I'm good with that. I think it's the key here is it's makeable. It's a makeable fight, and sometimes you just got to dance with the person who's willing. There are other targets out there, but Estrada is quickly establishing himself as the class of the division. So as long as he stays active, he gets out there and lets us see him in action. I'm fairly content with that. I think it's a fairly good matchup.
I'll go to you, Jacob, and then you can follow up, Daniel. Your reaction, your thoughts on what's more than likely a unification bout for Estrada coming up against Cal Yafai.
Yeah, I'm fine with it in the sense, because he has a belt, and it'd be unification fight. So I mean, that's what I'd like to see happen. Of course, I want to see a third fight with Rungvisai, because they each have a win, and so I think that's where this eventual road leads to. A trilogy fight, because their first two fights were really good and competitive. So keep Estrada active, put Yafai in there, and unify, and then he can start looking at what his next options are. And if they can put it on that undercard, like you were saying, then that just beefs up that that particular card and a little bit more.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, it's a sensible fight to make. I am of the opinion that Kalya fight is the weakest link in the division. So it would be a good pick-up inventory for Estrada. And save yourself up because we know how the division is starting to shape up a little bit. So it's a good thing to do, and it's an easy fight to make on the zone match room. So why not?
Last fight on the docket here. I don't know who saw this fight, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Whoever can respond can. We've talked in the past about Kosei Tanaka, current WBO flyweight champion, one of the more accomplished fighters in the sport that people do not know about. Well, he had a mandatory defense this past Saturday as well. He beat Jonathan Gonzalez, stopped him in the 7th, but he had his struggles along the way. He had difficulty coping with the southpaw style of Gonzalez, who moved constantly throughout. But he found a way to get to Gonzalez. At the end of the day, power and body punching, one of the better aspects of Tanaka's game. Tanaka, a fighter with a complete arsenal, in my opinion, a favorite of Prodigy from Three Kings Boxing. We have a friendly back and forth debate about who's the best fighter in Japan, Tanaka or Inoue. But anyway, Tanaka did what he had to do. For anyone here who saw the fight, your reaction to um, Tanaka's performance and how he kind of struggled a bit before eventually finishing Gonzalez off.
I did see the fight, and I did see it live. It was a crazy weekend. I realized by the end of Saturday, I'd watched 7 cards in like 72 hours, and this was one of them. I didn't perceive, Michael, that he was struggling. The first 2 rounds, he seemed like he was cautious in assessment mode. They were good rounds for the challenger. And my perception is that once he spent those first 6 minutes checking things out, he decided this guy's got nothing, and he mowed him down. Boom, fight over. That's just how good he is. That's how I saw the fight. He delivered a performance for the fans. He made quick work of it, and is one of the cliches in boxing goes, they do not get paid by the hour. So he took care of business.
Were you able to see the fight, either Jacob or Daniel? If you did, a quick word.
Yeah, I actually agree with Kel here. I think that those first couple rounds were just kind of a measuring rounds to see what Gonzalez had to bring to the table. Gonzalez is his 3 losses, they're all been knockouts. And once Tanaka, who digs very good to the body, once he started landing like some body shots, Gonzalez, he got zapped. But I give Gonzalez credit. I mean, he kept he got up from 2 of those punches, and some people probably would have just laid down, but he came to fight, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, he did
wasn't to
technically get a knockdown, so
yeah. It just wasn't to be. Tanaka, just I think it has more skill and more power, and hopefully, he can. I know all his fights have been in Japan, but hopefully, we can see him in the States sometime. Come out to the LA. They have a pretty good Japanese fan base out here, so he'd be welcome to come out here and fight.
Quick word, Daniel, if you was able to see the fight.
I wasn't able to see the fight as it happened. I saw the highlights, and I agree with it. Like, Gonzalez did get a decent pairing for his shot, but Tanaka did what he was supposed to do. It was a pretty good fight, pretty entertaining fight. And it started off a weekend that has become very entertaining fights. There weren't fights that I would actually, at least in the top tier of the card, that you could say were washes. That's rare.
Um, in the aftermath, Tanaka had the day after the fight, I should say, Tanaka had a press conference in which he disclosed that he was sick leading up to the fight, and that played a factor into his preparation, into what he said his lack of speed during the fight. The interesting thing that was disclosed also during the presser after the fight is that Tanaka and his promoter said that for the time being, their plan is to stay at 112 pounds and seek a unification bout. It has been widely rumored that Tanaka, who because he was sick and whatnot, had weight difficulties, had difficulties making the 112-pound limit for this fight. It's been widely rumored that the plan is for him to move up and fight Kazuto Ioka at the end of the year at 115 pounds. Uh, the question is for everybody here. Um, the level of surprise that, for now at least, Tanaka said he's going to stay at 112 pounds instead of moving up and seek what would be a big money fight against Ioka at 115.
It's a great fight. If he needs to move up in weight, if that's his call and he thinks he's going to feel more comfortable there, great. Not a surprise. It's tough to stay at your original weight class when there's so little margin in between. Down at those small weight classes, we're talking a difference of 3 to 5 pounds, at most. So it's a smart thing to do. If you're struggling, your performance is going to suffer. In my opinion, we've seen too many guys trying desperately to hang on to a weight they can't easily make, and they either deplete themselves so much their performance suffers, or they can't make the fight at all, Luis Neri. So don't do that shit, right? Move up, perform well there, and make some good fights.
But didn't he say that because he was sick, that was part of the reason that he couldn't make weight?
Well,
or he was having trouble making weight. So
Right.
it's two
Yeah.
different things.
Sure.
There's the I can't make weight and I'm like struggling to make weight, or something is keeping me from making weight because I'm sick and I'm dealing with that and I'm not focusing on cutting weight.
Well, and it can be that there's a little truth to both. He was sick, and by the way, he's having trouble making weight. But oh, by the way, he probably might have trouble making weight anyway, even if he wasn't sick. But the struggle wouldn't be quite as bad. Eventually, though, as guys age and as they put on man strength muscle, and it's just the march of time. It's inevitable. It's really, really rare somebody can stay in one weight class their entire career, especially in the lower weight divisions. So
He's only 24 though. I mean, he's not.
well, he's only
old.
24, but yeah, you weigh 112 pounds. You aren't as skinny as you were at 18 or 19, and suddenly you hit 25, and it can make the difference. And certainly, as he starts heading more towards 30 than 20, it's going to be affected. So he may decide, listen, I'm a better performer. I'm stronger. I like the feeling of 115. You'll see guys who can make a lower weight who will tell you, you know what, I feel better at this weight. I feel better up. The opposite happens once in a while, less often, but sometimes guys.
Yeah, most of the time they feel better because they're not. They
Yeah,
don't have to go through the
well,
hell of watching their diet and cutting so much weight. So I mean that's I've heard from many boxers that's the worst part about boxing is
absolutely.
making weight. It just like because if you're not getting to eat what you want, certain things you want, or being able to cheat, it puts you in a bad mood, and then it affects you mentally and physically. So
Even Andre Ward admitted when he went up from 168 to 175 how much of a relief it was not having to watch every bite of food he put into his mouth. And he laughed about it. I had a conversation with him about this one time. And he admitted, yeah, it is really a luxury. I just feel so great not having to sweat it so much. So if, as long as other factors are favorable, you're tall enough for the division, the competition isn't appreciably more scary to you, or whatever, those are decisions that the fighter and the trainer should make. And what I don't like is the fans second guessing it. That's a call that they've got to make.
Let's get Daniel into this discussion. Your reaction to the Tanaka camp saying that for the time being they're going to stay at 112 pounds. For me, not just the issue of, I think that Tanaka's a growing young man. He's only 24, but seeking a unification bout there from a monetary perspective, is it worth it when you have, is it worth it saying fighting a unification bout, say against someone like a Charlie Edwards who's fighting this weekend, or one of the other champs, versus fighting established, borderline, if not outright star slash superstar, in Ioka, which would once again be a tremendous bout in Japan. Are you there,
Hello?
Daniel?
Yes. Yeah, sorry. I was I was answering to somebody in the text. Well, this is easier said than done, particularly always in the lower weight classes. You mentioned the potential that you have with the unifications, but that enticement of an Ioka fight, whether it's in Japan or even if they try to do with in the U.S., because remember, Kazuto's been trying to establish his international footprint lately. It's going to be very tough to where it is going to be, because you could only have the excuse that you were sick and you were having struggled making weight for so long. And we have to admit, those rumors about Tanaka struggling to make weight predate him being sick. So I'd say he probably is going to try. He'll try a unification fight. If it doesn't happen, then he'll make the move to 115, because quite frankly, yes, I don't like the fact that they move up so fast, but 115 is actually one of the better divisions right now. And you'll not only get better exposure, you'll get a larger limelight.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Edwards, with Alani, the South African champion, the lock in, just from a money perspective, I just don't see what's the point when you got such juicy matchups at 115, even if it's not an Ioka. Winner of Estrada, you fight. You got Ancanyas out there.
Nietes.
A rematch
Johnny.
with Nietes. What fighting Don Nietes? Even him at 115. So I was put back a bit by him saying he's going to stay at 112 pounds, but that's his decision. Who will he fight it in later on this year? Because he said he's going to fight one more time before the year is out. We don't know, but that's his decision. I think they should go a different route.
Maybe on that
personally.
they do that New Year's Eve card. That they like to do that in Japan, don't they?
Yeah,
End of the year, they usually have some big fights.
yeah. I just think for that New Year's Eve card, he should go a different route and shoot for the stars there. If the fight is there, it's a natural matchup with Ioka. If it's an opportunity to make it, I say go ahead and make it. Let's move on to some news here. Much scuttlebutt back and forth about Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua rematch. Just a quick word from you guys. The rematch is officially a go. Ruiz last week said that he's accepted the offer the fight is going to happen. I think there's going to be a news conference this coming week. Uh, your thoughts on the fact that the rematch is officially going to happen?
I don't see this as anything particularly surprising. Ruiz and his team did the right thing in pushing the negotiation to absolutely max out his payday. The understanding is that he got 3 million more in the end deal for signing. It's a done deal. They're ready to go. So Matchroom announced as of Wednesday or Thursday that the press tour will take place next week. The first stop will be in Saudi Arabia at or near the site of the venue. The next stop will be in London. The final stop will be in New York. I will tell you, the boxing media in the Southern California, Nevada area, which is Andy Ruiz's home territory, are mightily irritated. There will be no press appearance here. Now, Ruiz is planning to train at altitude in Mexico. So let us assume they're going to do their press tour next week, and then both camps are going to commence, and they're going to be far from prying eyes, which is smart. But really, you couldn't have brought him out to Los Angeles to meet with those of us in the boxing media who actually know the guy, who've been into the gym, who've seen him for years. Kind of ridiculous. But I have to say, it's part of the drill overall, with the sighting of this fight in a Middle Eastern country known for significant human rights issues away from both fan bases, and where those of us who work in the boxing community, particularly media, who are women and Americans, are not welcome. And I sure as hell don't plan to fly over there. So very disappointing. But we'll see what happens. We're going to get to see them see each other and face off for the first time since the fight. There's going to be a lot of tea leaves being read when that happens, which should be very interesting. Let the speculation begin.
Is Andy going to hand over his belts to let Joshua hold them?
Now, wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be funny? Well, Ruiz has been taking some heat for living the high life, in the few months after his victory, for spending money on a fairly luxurious home up in the Los Angeles area, for throwing himself an early 30th birthday party because he will turn 30 during camp. So it was a pretty wild affair, if you've seen any of the video online.
He got a lottery ticket and he cashed it in.
Absolutely. That's what he's been doing. Can he buckle down and get prepared?
Yes.
Certainly has before. Yeah, I don't think that anyone can blame whatever happens to him or doesn't happen to him in the ring.
He doesn't have to cut weight. He's not worrying about that part. He's just worrying about sharpening his skills. He's got good skills. He's got fast hands. He's got decent feet. I mean,
Ruiz has been in a boxing ring since he was practically a toddler, and nobody has ever questioned his work ethic in the gym. And he's been a gym rat more or less his whole life. He just won a big, big, big victory. Isn't he allowed to enjoy it? And we can question whether he's made some questionable financial decisions. But you know what? That's his call. We're not living that life. He's living that life. And there is something to be said for him enjoying the fruits of his labor.
Your reaction, Jacob, specifically to what Gail mentioned about about there not being a presser in the Southern California area. You, like Gail, reside in Southern California. You attend a lot of fights and a lot of media events out there. Given that Ruiz, Southern California based, Mexican American, disappointed as Gail? Are you disappointed? Are you disappointed along with Gail in the fact that there won't be a press event for Ruiz in his home area?
Um, I mean, I can see where she's coming from in the sense, and the the people that cover the sport. I'm not I'm not anywhere near the level of the award-winning Miss Falkenthal is, but um, I think strategically, I think this is being done by the Hearn. I think they're trying to keep everything as under wraps as possible to maybe have the Joshua's focus be on the fight. I think Ruiz, I could see him potentially train, but coming out to do something. It might not be like an official event, but I think he'll have some breaks in between and be able to meet with do interviews and whatnot. I think the more, I guess, problematic thing for me is and not just speaking in the sense of where this is going to be held and how that's going to be received within the boxing, the people that cover boxing, and just with all the political issues that Gail has spoke about, and human rights issues. I think that's going to be the bigger story, because they're potentially they're not going to have a lot of coverage from some people that have been following Ruiz for a while, or that have put a lot into the sport of boxing on the writing and commentating part. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a slap in the face, for a fight of this magnitude. But it's crazy boxing, as we say. There's all kinds of things that are involved, and so many people's hands are in the cookie jar that some of the decisions just aren't with the fighters themselves, on what they get to do. But hopefully nobody gets injured, and hopefully this fight goes off. And I'd be interested to know whether Ruiz has a rematch clause in his contract if he were to lose, being the
Hmm,
champion.
that's interesting. That's interesting. I go to you, Daniel. Um, that's an interesting point. You kind of broke me from my question I was going to ask Daniel there. That again, raised my eyebrows there. Um, Going to you, Daniel. Your reaction to this? I too, like Gail, have my expressed my concerns about whether the fight was even going to happen in Saudi Arabia, and I wonder how many boxing media members from the U.S. will even attend this event, even though Ruiz, uh, U.S. guy, well, Mexican American champion. Um, your thoughts on the fact that this fight is a go, in spite of the concerns, as pointed out by both Gail and Jacob?
Well, first, the dynamic of not having the conference in LA to me is more of a tactical move, because if you don't have a press conference in LA, what are you going to be taking away tactically? You're going to be taking away the home field or home court advantage for Andy Ruiz, because in many ways they're still treating the situation like Joshua is still, and in many ways he is, the A side in this. So most of the press locations have been done to cater to him. If you put it in LA, you're gonna put it where a lot of people are gonna come out strictly for Ruiz, and that's not gonna look good when you're Eddie Hearn and when you're Joshua's people. You want Joshua to be the one that gets the most attention, even though he's now technically the challenger. As far as the venue, as far as the media going into it, that's going to be a difficult gauge, because remember, we have to remember, Saudi Arabia has been trying to get to boxing. Like, remember, they were the original site of the cruiserweight final of the World Boxing Super Series until Russian money got involved. So they've been trying to do this. Well, Saudi Arabia in general has this like 10 to 15 year PR plan to try to clean up its image in the eyes of the world, even though like obviously it's tough to do that when you slaughter one of your own citizens in your own embassy. But that's going to be the difficult part to gauge as far as the preparation for it, because I'll say it again, like I cover wrestling too, and if you're going to gauge the interest and the level of fanfare that this fight's going to get, you have to gauge it by the now 3 events that WWE has had in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, that one is called the Greatest Royal Rumble, one is called Crown Jewel, the most recent one is called Super Showdown, and they're going to have another one in October called Crown Jewel 2019. Not a lot of fanfare, not a lot of crowds. If you see most of the floor, it's not even going to be looking like ringside seats. It looks like real actual lounges, and it's mainly going to be for the Saudi elite to sit there. That's going to be a different experience if you're a media member going in, because not only are you going to be able to be as close to the action as you probably want, you're not going to be able to have some of the freedoms as far as talking as much as you want. Because obviously, somewhere along the lines, Andy Ruiz might wear a rosary. And considering where that's going to be, that's not going to play good into it. But
yeah.
But that's the dice in the game when you go through it. When you go to a place like Saudi Arabia, now heavyweight boxing. We have to admit, heavyweight boxing has long been filled with big fights put into locations that you would not think make sense. Whether it's the Thriller in Manila, the Rumble in the Jungle, all of them were put in places where, considering the fighters involved, it doesn't make sense. But it's one of the things that happens, and you're seeing it at this stage. Like I said, the Saudis are throwing money, and obviously they throw enough of it where Andy Ruiz was able to agree with it. The only question now that remains is how lenient are they going to attempt to be? Because obviously, when I mentioned the WWE events, I just mentioned it based on the crowd fare, on how the crowd's going to react. But WWE is its own enterprise. They control the production, they control the view, and they control their narrative. In an actual sport, in the sense of the fact that the competition is legitimate, is not predetermined, and as a sport that is as mercenary as boxing is, that's going to be a difficult thing to gauge, because there's a lot of different actors that fall into it that are very, very unpredictable. And even the most carefree put in situations sometimes one of drama. Should I remind people of the near riot that Freddie Roach and Robert Garcia had when it was Manny Pacquiao versus Brandon Rios?
Let's also, just to close this off, and this could be this is probably a discussion we'll have in much greater detail as this fight nears, but there is no comparison between the great classic heavyweight fights of the 70s, the Rumble in the Jungle, the Thriller in Manila, and today's boxing reality as a business and as a sport, and the reality of the media today versus then. Boxing was still a network television sport back in the 70s. There was no internet back in the 70s. Every town had a major newspaper. There were full-time boxing beat writers in virtually every city in North America, and I would surmise Great Britain. Their newspapers just pay to send them back there. No problem. Network TV, we all get to see it. None of that exists today. None of it. There are perhaps 2 or 3 dozen full-time, legitimately independent, objective boxing journalists in the United States today. You can start naming them. Dan Raphael, Kevin Iole, David Avila is one. There are very few. Those guys will get sent there. No question about it. Their news organizations will pay for them to go as part of their job. But so much boxing coverage has been filled in. The blanks have been filled in, all the space where all the newspaper reporters and network TV guys disappeared. It's people like us who filled in. Somebody like me who's able to do it part-time because I have a professional background, but I don't get paid full-time to do this. And no one's paying me to go to Saudi Arabia. And even if somebody was, you know what? It'd be very expensive because I want full-time bodyguard and escort there. It would be extremely dangerous, in my opinion, to go. You've got a lot of guys who run YouTube channels. No such thing back during the Rumble in the Jungle Days. Can they afford to go? Ellie Seckback, yeah, he'll go. Some of the other guys based in LA who've covered Ruiz for years, no, because it's not their full-time job. It's essentially their side hustle. That's it. So it's troubling to me that there's no recognition of this. And I don't know what kind of accommodation may or may not be made. I don't know. Maybe Eddie Hearn says, hey, we're going to charter a plane. All you have to do is get your ass to New York. We'll take you from there. Be interesting to see if that happens. But we will find out in the coming weeks.
Going to move on. Well, before we move on to the preview some fights here, I might split this up to cut some time. Any news, any boxing news that either you, Gail, Jacob, Daniel want to discuss, bring up on the show?
We are hearing things about filling out of the Southern California boxing calendar coming in the fall. I believe you are going to see Jose Ramirez back in action before the year is over in a Southern California venue this time. I'll leave it at that. I'm hearing some other interesting things. So everyone stay tuned. We're going to have, I think, a very good last quarter of boxing here in the U.S.
Jacob, Daniel, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I was going to say, like Gail said, I've been hearing a lot of potential fights being hosted in the LA area. Most notably, the Bank of California arena again, which is the one that they just had that, what's his face, just fought there. But the first event that they had there, but
the Navarrete.
Navarrete, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And then, also, with the Dignity Health Sports Park, or StubHub, as you guys like to call it, that there seems to be fights that are potentially coming together. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of action within the Southern California area. I think the one that was being for the StubHub was Burchelt versus Sosa. That they're trying to do it for November 2nd, which isn't that the Canelo date? That's kind of weird. So, yeah, I don't know. It seems like they're trying to make a bunch of different things happen, and to fill out the calendar for the second part of the year here.
Any quick news developments from your end, Daniel? I think Daniel
not from what I see, unfortunately, but I have been hearing a little bit of chatter, that it's probably going to be mostly the fights that are going to be last quarter is probably going to be in the West Coast because mainly because thanks to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving signed with the Brooklyn Nets, they don't expect a lot of vacancies open at Barclays Center.
Hmm. Going to move on to talk about the fights that's upcoming this weekend. Going to give everybody to talk about the high profile bout, and then I'm going to split things up with other bouts. High profile bout being, of course, Vasiliy Lomachenko. He's venturing over to the UK to fight Luke Campbell, WBO, WBA, vacant WBC titles um, on the line. Um, Lomachenko is the heavy favorite. I'm predicting him to win, but I think that Campbell is going to give him a tougher fight than many people expect. I like the way Campbell fights. I thought he gave a very good account of himself in the loss to Linares. Um, I think he's determined. I think his skill set is very impressive. His height may give Lomachenko some problems. The amateur pedigree, so he knows how to fight. The length, but Lomachenko is elite, arguably the best fighter in the world. I think he will be just too much in terms of speed, in terms of angles for Campbell at the end of the day, and I predict he will win by decision. I'll go around the panel here, starting with you, Gail. Your thoughts on Lomachenko and Campbell?
Along the way, Lomachenko has faced opponents whom we've thought would give him a real test, who were dangerous. And he's blown through every single one of them. I think the same thing is going to happen here. I think that Campbell may have some good early rounds. Lomachenko will often let an opponent play out their strategy, and he observes and he processes. What Lomachenko does so well, in addition to his physical talents, is he is masterful at solving puzzles. And he and his father actually work at mental games and puzzles. And apparently he could throw a Rubik's Cube together like nobody's business. It's the mental acuity. He sizes up all that data coming in at him, processes it, and then he gets into those fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, and he starts solving the puzzle, whatever's in front of him. And he has so demoralized world-class opponents that they've quit. Now, I don't think Campbell's going to quit. He's certainly not going to do it in front of a home crowd. That will help him, but I think he goes down inevitably like all the rest. I see maybe a 10th round attrition type stoppage, not a one-punch knockout, but he simply, just tied up in knots, pummeled. A referee or a corner finally says, son, you're done. I think that's what we're going to see.
Go around to you, Daniel and Jacob. Do you have the same thought process on this fight as Gail?
In a way, yes. Luke Campbell, we have to remember, did show a pretty good showing when he fought Linares. The stronger case that the cards should have been a little bit closer than what they were. But the thing about it, unfortunately, is the issues that Linares provided Luke Campbell late, Vasiliy will present it to them in spades, particularly when it comes to the footwork. Now, that's not to say that Campbell's not going to have his moments. We've said it. He had his moments against Linares. But I think this is going to be a little bit too much too soon. The difference being that in this case, instead of being somebody that's being a straightforward puncher, you have somebody that's more of a technician than Luke Campbell. But I predict, like I said, another easy Loma victory.
You echo the same sentiments, Jacob?
No, I actually don't. I think Lomachenko's gonna win, but I think Luke Campbell. So what I'm kind of going back to is Lomachenko's fight with Pedraza. I thought he was going to blow through Pedraza, but Pedraza gave him a tough fight. I know he eventually caught him, but it went to a decision. But Pedraza had his moments in that fight. And one advantage that Luke Campbell has, I mean, he's a tough kid. That fight that Daniel was talking about against Linares, it was the cards were 114, 113, 115, 113, and 115, 112. So it was a close contest, and it was a split decision win for Linares. And Campbell did get up in the second round. He got knocked down, but he got up and he kind of surged back. And had a lot of good rounds towards the later half of that fight. I think he's definitely. I mean, he's obviously taller and longer than Lomachenko. I think he'll be wise to try to utilize that as much as possible. I know it's going to be hard because Lomachenko, is very skilled and moves very well. He's got great feet. But I'm going to say something. This is probably going to sound crazy, but in a way, Lomachenko is kind of predictable. If you watch footages of his fights, he does a lot of this. He does a lot of the same things. When he gets inside, he likes to pivot and kind of go around the fighter and get different angles and stuff like that. So if they were smart, I think if they studied the film on Lomachenko, you can kind of know what's coming, and then also study that fight with Linares where he was able to knock Lomachenko down. So and then the
In
Pedraza
other
fight.
words, you're saying if a fighter is real careful and uses his eyes, he can solve the matrix.
I'm not saying he's gonna solve it, but I think it'll serve him well in making it more competitive. I still think Lomachenko's gonna win. I just think he's that much more skilled, but I don't think that he's gonna blow through Campbell. I have a feeling that Campbell's gonna give him a pretty good show, and he's in his in front of his home crowd. So there's a lot of motivation there. I think the kid believes in himself. So I don't think he's not gonna quit, and I don't think he's gonna give up. So and he's more of a kind of it seems like a late starter in the sense that he might give away some of the early rounds, or not give them away, but Lomachenko might win some of the early rounds. But I think he'll have some competitive rounds in there. But if he's smart and he uses his length well, I think he can make this very competitive.
So you fall in line to my way of thinking. He's going to make this a tougher fight than the experts, quote unquote, think.
Yeah.
Let's go to some other fights here, and this is where I want to split fights up between individuals. Uh, I'm going back to you. I'm going to you, Gail. Hughie Fury versus Povetkin. He's fighting on the undercard of Loma and Campbell. My thing with Fury is I wonder if he has full confidence in himself. Whether it's the fight with Parker in which he lost, and that's just that stunk on ice fight. In other times I've seen him in the ring, I question whether he has true self belief. Povetkin is an old dog, but Povetkin still has power and he still has a high degree skill set. He proved that in the Joshua fight, even in the loss. He landed some punches on Joshua, got his attention in there a couple of times. It's because of that I'm going with the grizzled vet here. Uh, your thoughts on this fight?
I agree with you. I think, we see Fury versus Povetkin, and you have to tell yourself, it ain't Tyson we're talking about here. And, there is a dynamic in families with siblings who both do the same sport. There are quite a few examples in all kinds of sports. And, inevitably one sibling is better than the other. And it makes for rough going sometimes with the lesser than sibling. I think Hughie's got a chip on his shoulder. I think it's a problem. Especially as Tyson has come on and grown in popularity and kind of moved to the United States, at least temporarily. He's between LA and Vegas. And so you have Hughie trying to struggle to make a point. I just don't think he's got it. you're right. Povetkin's an old dog, but he's a tough old guy. He does have that ring experience. He knows how to hang in there, and he is one of those fighters that can end it in one punch. That possibility still remains. I think, though, we might just see a hellacious mess of a fight. I mean, I think it might just get pretty dodgy. Writer Adam Abramowitz this morning said, I think this fight could get gnarly. You know, I'm going with that. I think this could be a fairly gnarly fight. Just, you know, not real pleasant. Not a lot of skills on display. Just kind of two big guys roughing each other up. And I almost hope that Povetkin ends it quick with some big blow and just get on to the main event. We'll see.
I'll go to you, Daniel, for this next fight. Charlie Edwards, since losing nearly 3 years ago to Casemiro, I think it was only his 8th professional fight when she jumped up and lost to Casemiro for the flyweight title. Casemiro, by the way, has moved up 2 weights and is an interim champion at 118 pounds. He's going to fight Zolane Tete coming up before the end of the year, I believe. Edwards has rebounded very, very nicely. He beat Rosales to win the title at 112 pounds, WBC title last December. Impressive in his first defense against Moreno, winning by decision. Fighting his number one contender, Julio Cesar Martinez. Um, if you hadn't seen Martinez, I think he's going to give Edwards a really good go. I wouldn't be surprised if he beat him. Martinez, he can pop, particularly to the body. And if Edwards is not on his game from a boxing standpoint, and if he is not able to uh, um, put some hurt on Martinez and keep him at bay, he's in for a real tough fight. Your thoughts? Are you there, Daniel? I think Daniel is not there. I'll go to Gail or Jacob. Any thoughts on this fight?
This is going to be a good little scrap, and not a lot of folks in the United States who are listening to us now probably know a lot about even Charlie Edwards, much less his opponent Martinez. You know how we love the skills and the speed in the lower weight classes here on the Pound for Pound Report, and you know they're just damn fun to watch. You know, it'll be the complete opposite of what I just talked about with the Fury and Povetkin fight being a rough and messy fight. These guys are going to be fast, skilled, throwing combination punches, moving around the ring. You know, you're going to enjoy a wonderful technical display. They're both very aggressive. Could be a fun fight. And Martinez is no one to be overlooked as an opponent, even though he's a mandatory, even though he has losses. Hey, Edwards does too. Doesn't matter. They're both really skilled guys in a competitive division. We just simply don't see it a lot in the United States. So it will be a fight to enjoy. Edwards is very, very popular in the UK, so crowd will be going nuts.
I'll go to you, Jacob. Also on this card, Joshua Buatsi. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think he's a future champion in waiting. Fighting a guy by the name of Ford, 10-round light heavyweight contest. I don't know much about Ford, but from what I've seen of Buatsi, I mean, nothing is guaranteed in this sport, of course. Upsets can happen, but I just think that Buatsi is a special talent. Your reaction to this fight? Your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's been said on this podcast many times that out of the up and comers at light heavyweight, Buatsi to me has been the most impressive. At least the fights that I've seen, and I know like Yarde was getting more of the, I think, the press but I think Buatsi is the better of the two if I had to pick one. As far as skill and talent. I don't know a bunch about Ford either. He's got 4 losses, and all pretty within the last couple years. So, I expect Buatsi. This is kind of a showcase fight in a sense. Just keep him active, put somebody in front of him. Let him get some rounds in. But I mean, in 2018, he had 6 fights, and this will be his 3rd fight in 2019. So I mean, yeah, I like the guy to stay active, and he's got a pretty good knockout ratio. So I expect he'll probably stop Ford.
Last fight here before we start to shut things down. The fights we just talked about is going to happen Saturday in London. Um, you can watch those fights on ESPN Plus streaming service. Tomorrow evening in Minneapolis on Fox, you're going to have Erislandy Lara fighting Ramon Alvarez. For those who don't know, Ramon is Canelo's brother, and Gail. The issue of weight comes up again as Alvarez comes in 4.5 pounds overweight. Um, these are one of the things that bugs you as a fan, as a journalist. Again, a fighter is not disciplined, is not showing the discipline to stay on weight. A pet peeve of yours.
You have one job, ladies and gentlemen. One job to make the weight on the scale. You know what? It's not like they put all the numbers in one of those bingo hoppers, twirl it around and say, oh, okay, tomorrow you need to weigh X. No, for weeks in advance what you're supposed to weigh. Hello? This is another situation where you have the admittedly lesser talented sibling of a better known named fighter in the ring with a chip on his shoulder, and then he goes and does this. It irritates the hell out of me. And, it puts the other fighter in a terrible position. Here you are, with every right to say, I won't fight him because he came in overweight. And then you got to figure out, all right, am I going to blow the whole card? It's a TV fight. Tickets were sold. Lots of people's jobs rely on this. You really screw up a lot. So the pressure is on for the opponent who did make weight to go along, to get along, to allow it to happen, figure out what kind of concessions work or don't work, or maybe the title that's in play isn't on the line. And, it's just a big damn mess. And this isn't exactly like it's a big barn burner card anyway. It's on Saturday of Labor Day weekend with a lot of other distractions. It's just so damned irritating. And I wish once in a while the other fighter would say, "Nah, you missed weight. I'm out."
I go to you.
Guys would do this.
I mean, it keeps creeping. It keeps popping up its ugly head. I go to you, Jacob and Daniel, if you're still there. Your reaction. Look, you knew Lara was the heavy favorite to begin with. On paper, it looks like on paper he should outbox Alvarez and outbox him comfortably. But again, you don't give yourself any. You don't. You don't do yourself justice. You act like you're not really serious when you come in that much overweight. Your reaction, Jacob, as well as Daniel, if you're there.
So this is my biggest pet peeve in boxing is not making weight. And I agree with Gail in the sense that I don't think it's their only job. I think it's their first job. I mean, they have other things that they need to do, like train for the fight, make a good fight, when they're in the ring, don't just, go in there for a paycheck. But it is probably the most important job that they have, is to make weight. And like she said, and like I've said many times, it's not like they didn't sign up and say, oh, we don't know what weight we're going to fight at, so we'll let you know the night before the fight. So, we'll see you in 3 months. They know, and their camp knows whether they're on pace to make weight and whether they need to do different things and be more disciplined. And I still, even if this guy gains 20 pounds, Lara still could beat him. The guy's still going to be an underdog. I think Lara can actually stop him. I don't think Ramon Alvarez is all that great. I think he's riding the coattails of his brother, because his brother is famous, and so he's able to get fights and whatnot because of that connection. So hopefully, I think Lara could still beat him, even if like he comes in heavy and whatever, give some of his purse. But I think to answer Gel's question, I think a lot of the times why people don't say no is because they went through camp, they suffered, they have to pay for all the training and all that stuff. They got to pay all the people, and so basically they miss out on a paycheck. So it's an opportunity. Most of the time they get like a 20% of the other opponent's paycheck plus their paycheck. So it's an opportunity to get a little bit more money, because you've been training for the 3 months or what have you, and putting all your effort into that, and you kept your end of the bargain. So it's kind of hard to, I think, throw that away, because you don't know when your next fight's going to be at that point. It could be maybe they can make a fight within a couple of weeks, or maybe it's 6 months. You don't know. It's the game.
I get it. And frankly, it mostly happens when the A side misses weight. It's actually much more common that the A side guy misses the weight, and then the B side challenger, many times it's a really rare opportunity for them, or they're getting a shot because they're a mandatory, or they're getting just a rare opportunity to fight for a title at any level, and they feel so under pressure to go ahead. They want their shot, but they end up at such a disadvantage. No amount of money can help them in the ring if that happens. So there are fighters like the one who shall not be named on this program, and Adrian Broner, and they've done that to opponents multiple times, and that's really at the end of the scale, pun intended, that burns me. I do not like to see that happen ever, and I get it why the B-side guys go through it. They just want their shot. They'll do anything.
Well, I also think that this is the second stage of what they've been instituting now, where people, when they sign the fight, they'll make like a stipulation, say for every pound that you're over, if they think they're in danger, they'll be like, hey, there's $100,000 fine, or whatever, to make it more strict for them, so they don't have to lose as much money.
That is why I really like the 30-day and the 7-day weigh-ins. Say what you will about the WBC, but I do like that. I do also like the IBF's rehydration limitations. Those are the kind of things we need to see more of to try to keep this under control.
Let me see if Daniel. Are you there, Daniel? I don't think he's there. He may have had issues, technical issues. I think we're going to start shutting the show down on that note. Since Daniel's not here right now, I'll give his information out. If you want to follow Daniel in Top Boxing or the NBA, specifically when it comes to the Miami Heat, you can check him out on the Inscriber, inscriber.com. He does a podcast with Francis and Joe from 4 Boxing News. You can check out all that you can find on SoundCloud. So you can check out his stuff on SoundCloud, Daniel Carpio, and as well as his stuff on theinscriber.com. I'll go to you, Gail from Community Digital News, for those who want to talk, the Sweet Science for those who want to talk all things when it comes to media, because you do teach media. Let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find me and my preview column fresh on the page today for the Lomachenko versus Campbell card at Communities Digital News. That is COMM Digi DIGI News, comdiginews.com. Give it a read and a share.
And last but certainly not least, Jacob from Japa Boxing, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk movies, because you do make appearances on the Wrong Real Movie podcast. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. And to all the listeners out there, I'm really not that angry of a person. I know I probably came off that way at the beginning of this episode, but it's
Have you
all
not had dinner? Or maybe you're hungry.
no. To defend myself, it's all in the love of boxing. I really love boxing. I like the purity of it, and I know that there's some things that happen with the sport that drive me crazy, but it's all out of love. It's not it's not out of I'm not a what do you call it? Get off my lawn, old man yet. But
Keyword yet.
yeah,
Finally, everybody, Jacob is just so smooth and easygoing. In fact, probably to an unnatural degree. So, hey, a little fire is good.
yeah, thanks. But again, follow the show. It's been my honor to be on this panel for many years, and help Mike out. Support him through his fund me or applications or whatever. And you can find me on Twitter, JRATM23. Or like you said, I make appearances on different film podcasts, and I usually, like, if you go to my Twitter feed, you'll see I tweet about them. I retweet episodes that they do, not just Wrong Reel, but other film podcasts that I find interesting. If you like movies, they cover all these people I talk to. They cover so many different variety of stuff. So and it actually opens your eyes to a bunch of things that maybe you didn't know about. So it's real fun.
Indeed, and if you want to talk boxing, if you want to talk music, if you want to talk fitness, you can check me out on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said to begin the show, want to check all things regarding Pound for Pound Box Report. The blog page is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. You check the upper right portion of the blog page. You will find the links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on all over platforms that carry our RSS feed. The donation links, Cash Me and PayPal, the my fitness coaching page. Like I said, I think, fingers crossed, that Gail will take part at the end of the month, if not early September. Hopefully, Daniel will as well. Next week, it may just be a recap show because looking at the schedule, to be honest, ain't nothing much happening next weekend, boxing wise. I guess they decided to skip everything and do and hold next weekend off, and focus on the 14th, the weekend of the 14th, because that's where a lot of boxing is going to be happening. So next week may be just strictly a recap show. I see Daniel is back. Quickly, Daniel, your reaction to your thoughts on the Charlie Edwards bout, and your reaction to Ramon Alvarez being coming in overweight.
Not just overweight, that he came in pretty much a division, almost an entire division overweight. I don't think he tried to make weight. What's going to be interesting, though, is watching Lara back with his original trainer, away from Ronnie Shields. How's this fight's going to gauge into it? Because say what you will, like as skilled as he was, as easy as his victories have been as far as from a skill standpoint, Lara hasn't exactly been the best, the most crowd pleasing, the crowd favorite. So I want to
With
see
the
how this
exception of the
change.
Hurd fight.
Yeah, with the exception of her fight. But then a lot of times it depends on and that's probably one of the reasons why he switched back from Ronnie Shields, because maybe Ronnie Shields opened him up and trying to change a little bit of his style, lost a little bit of the defensive prowess that he wanted. Unfortunately, what was going on with the Charlie Edwards fight?
Your thoughts on his fight? He has a mandatory fight defense, excuse me, against a guy by the name of Martinez, who I personally think is going to give Edwards a really tough go.
I have to look into that because I've not seen much of it, and fortunately, it's one of those fights that flew under the radar. But I do like Charlie Edwards. It is going to be probably a good fight to make it, and if we're judging by anything by this year, it'll probably a lot more entertaining fight than what we give credit for.
Hmm. And again, if you want to check out all things regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, where to find us, social media, where to find us, RSS platforms, the donation links. Let donation be the best nation. I don't care if it's $1, $2, $5, $10, or if you can spare more, please do. Use the donations that we've seen before to upgrade the equipment. In spite of my Wi-Fi issues, I did get a new earbud and all that with a better mic, so you may be able to hear me more clearly. So those donations were used to good use. I want to give a shout out to Jacob and others for their donations. So yeah, next week will probably be strictly a recap show. There's nothing much happening on the weekend of the 7th. To be honest, no significant fights to note. So next week will probably be a recap show. So for Gail, for Jacob, for Daniel, this has been episode 263 of Pound for Pound Box Report. I'm your host, Michael. We'll see you guys next time. Special Friday evening live episode. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night. Stay off my lawn.